Well, Scott, thanks for joining us. And this is an opportunity, I think, for people to get to know you a little bit and get to know a little bit about your background. So you and I go back quite a ways. And I think I remember hearing your name the spring I took over as head baseball coach at Ohio Wesleyan University. Had a couple Division I guys and a couple pro guys say, "Hey, have you checked out this player down at Whitehall? A pretty good player." And I said, "What's his name?" They said, "Todd Klein." And I went down and watched a game down in Franklin County Stadium. And I saw this skinny little left-handed hitter, about 6'3", could run like a deer, and he had 5 hits, I think, that day, or 4 or 5 hits. Everything was down the left field line, but they were line drive bullets. And I said, I got to find out who this guy is. And they told me, I said, his name is Scott Tedder. And he's a pretty good basketball player. So you fill us in here a little bit. From that point, what were you doing in high school? Because you happened to come off a pretty good high school basketball career. I think you had a teammate that went on to play at Duke. And
Yes.
you were pretty heavily recruited. So tell us what you were thinking at that time.
At that time, our junior year, we were ranked number 1 in the state. And as you said, we had Martin Nestle, who was a 7-footer who was getting recruited by everybody in the country. We would have open gyms, and everybody from Duke to Ohio State to Indiana to North Carolina State to Syracuse would all come and watch our open gyms. And then Marty finally decided to go to Duke, so that kind of cleared the way from him. And then my senior year, I thought, was probably our best year because I was the only starter coming back my senior year in basketball. All the rest of them were JV guys. So we went to the regional finals. In the regional semifinals, we beat Jay Burson down at Ohio University. So that was a big win. And then we lost in the regional finals to Rulersburg. So I was trying to make a college decision, and then kind of waited and listened to people. They said, wait, the offers will come. To be honest with you, I really wanted to go to Ohio University. Danny Nee was there watching me, and I had a pretty good game. And then I realized that some of these coaches didn't want me to play 2 sports. So I decided to take some visits. I went to Ashland, Rio Grande, and then ended up at Ohio Wesleyan with you and Coach Mahaffey. And there was no discrepancy about playing 2 sports as long as you could handle it academically. So I decided to attend Ohio Wesleyan University.
So basketball-wise, you came into a program that had, I think, 4 seniors starting?
Yes.
How was that experience?
That was great, learning from them. Mark Oberholzer, Dave Hollenball, Chip Jarrett. We were great leaders on that team. That was probably our second best team. Obviously, our senior year was our best team, but we didn't have automatic bids in because it was the first year for the NCAC. So we won the league, but we didn't get a bid into NCAA. And then the following 2 years, we won the league also. And then obviously my senior year, we went on to win the national championship. So I think it all started our freshman year. We brought in 6 players. Coach Mahaffey did, and then all 5 of them started my senior year that led us to the national championship.
You played baseball and basketball, All-American in both sports. Your junior year, you get drafted by the Cleveland Indians, and you didn't sign. What were you thinking? Division III kid, get drafted?
To be honest with you, I wanted to come back and get some more schooling in and try, go towards my degree. Plus, it was a 36 round. They didn't really offer, not that the money was a factor, but they offered $5,000, and it's a small world because I think it was Dave Koblenz, who's now, I think, helping at Ohio Wesleyan now as an assistant coach. So I decided, and then they didn't want me to play basketball if I did sign. So they were going to let me not play basketball in the fall or the winter because they wanted to have me ready for the spring. So I decided to come back, and it was probably the best decision I ever made.
So 1988, team wins. It's a first ever invite for an Ohio Wesleyan basketball team into an NCAA basketball tournament. You guys have some really tough games. Fortunately, you play a lot of them at home. Baseball team, those first couple weekends, we're in Florida. So we're playing games without you. And I understand there was a couple games at home. Illinois Wesleyan had a great player. You guys knocked them off, and then I think Hope was there. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. First of all, I'd like to thank Coach Burson for letting us host the regionals and the Sweet 16. He had a lot of pull on that, and he felt we were good enough and high enough seed to host the regionals and I guess the super regionals, Sweet 16. And yeah, Hope was a really tough game. Overtime, I was fortunate enough to hit a 3-pointer at the buzzer to win, and then we came up against Illinois Wesleyan, who had a 7-footer, who I believe played a couple years overseas, and then they had a real good power forward. They were the best team by far that we played all year, and we beat them, I believe, 106-103. But it was a great game, sold out, packed house, and then that led us to the Final Four, going to Grand Rapids.
So we got back for Grand Rapids. We were supposed to play that weekend. Had a major snowstorm come through. So my wife at the time was my fiance, and we decided to drive up, watch the games. And the night of the banquet, I think one of the coaches got up, one of the favorites, and said something that kind of inspired you guys a little bit.
Yeah, it was a Scranton coach. He said, if you guys want to watch a real good basketball team, watch us. And me and Casey Lee and Lee Rowlandson and Mike Smith kind of looked at each other like, did he just really say that? And if you know Coach Mahaffey, he's like, the pessimistic. He plays everything down. Well, we're just glad to be here and all this stuff. And then the Scranton coach went up there and pretty much said that they were a team to beat. So that gave us extra incentive. We had to beat Nebraska Wesleyan first to get to Scranton, and then we were fortunate enough to beat Scranton, I think by the largest margin at the time for a national championship by 22 points.
You were MVP. You were the National Player of the Year in basketball that year. Pretty good season. Looking back on that season, one of the games I think that stands out to a lot of people around Central Ohio was a game against Ohio University. And I remember the pre-tip-off meeting with the captains. I looked out there and I saw you and Mike Smith, who 5'8", 5'9", and OU standing out there with a trio of guys that are about 6'10", 6'11". Tell us a little bit about that meeting and that game.
It was pretty funny because me and Smitty just kind of looked at each other at half court and just kind of started laughing. And then, to be honest with you, that game gave me extra incentive because as I said earlier, I really wanted to go to Ohio University and play basketball, but they didn't offer. So I had an extra incentive to really not put on a show, but really win the game. So we were fortunate enough, played really, really well. I started looking at the stats of that a couple years back. The score was 122-115. I believe they had 40 turnovers and we had 36. So if you could imagine, if we'd have scored on some of those possessions, they would have scored in one of those possessions. It'd probably been like 140-136. But we were fortunate enough to come out there and beat a Division I team. And I think that's really what got us rolling towards the national championship.
I remember in that game there was a stretch late in the first half, into the second half, that you guys outscored Ohio University 42-17. And the thing that I remember most about that game that probably got you and Mike Smith and some of the other guards excited was Billy Hahn, first-year head coach, comes out and tries to press a pressing team. And what I still, to this day, can't quite figure out is their big man, instead of being back guarding the basket, came out to the top of the key. So I just remember during that 42-17 stretch, it seemed like you and Smitty were coming down 2-on-1 the whole time, either getting fouled or going by him for a layup. What do you remember about that?
Yeah, that was a great feeling. The theory is press teams don't like to be pressed, but we pressed all year, so we went against it every day in practice. So when they started doing that, yeah, they had the height advantage, but I think, to be honest with you, we were a little faster than they were. And they were a Division I school. I mean, they were big and strong. We broke the press probably like 20 times, like you said, and, went on that 42-17 run. And he didn't take it off. He just kept it on. And so we just kept on running our press offense. And, we were fortunate enough to get some layups and fortunate enough to win the game. And I think it's still a convocation record, the 50 points that I scored by a visiting team. So I was very fortunate that my teammates found me, and I had a great game.
I remember after that game, and you guys went on to win the national championship, you were invited out to the NCAA Division I Final Four. I had a conversation with you, I think, when you got back, about the skill level. And, hey, Scott, do you have a thought about playing NBA or trying out, play some pro basketball? Because obviously you're best player in the country in Division III, one of the best athletes ever. What do you think after coming back from that Division I tournament?
I had a pretty good idea what was going to happen because I think the NBA scouting director talked to Marty Blake was his name, talked to Coach Mahaffey and said that they were going to cut the NBA draft back from 7 rounds to 2 rounds. So he didn't think I would get drafted in the first 2 rounds, but maybe if the draft was still 7 rounds, I had a possibility of going to the 3rd or 4th round or something like that, maybe the 5th round. But the year that was my senior, I think was 88. They cut the NBA draft to 2 rounds. So it's kind of unfortunate, but I had some offers to go play over in Germany and Luxembourg with Lee Rowlandson, but I decided to stay and then finish school and start spring with the baseball team.
And Lee was the other All-American on the basketball team, right? 6'10", ended up being about 225, 230, and came in as the 6'6", giant feet, having trouble standing up on the floor, and really blossomed into an outstanding player.
He did. He was my roommate for 3 years. So I think he came in at like 6'6", like 140 maybe, and really didn't have many skills. But by the time he left, he actually played in Luxembourg for, I believe, for about 10 years after Ohio Wesleyan. So he really skilled his games and was a great inside player for us. We had a good combo of me on the outside and him on the inside. So you had to decide which one you're going to take away, the inside or the outside. So it was a good combination, and obviously, led us to the national championship.
Yeah, I remember Coach Mahaffey telling me early that season that he'd never had a group of athletes like he had that year, that he was really excited about the season. But one of the things that I think I look back on is that of your 5 starters on that national championship team, 4 of them played JV ball their first couple of years.
Yeah, it was. Like I said, we all came in together, and they had to wait their time. We were heavy loaded when we came in. Obviously, like you mentioned earlier, 4 seniors started, and then they had some backups. So they had to wait their time, which they did, and they just kept on working. Casey Lee and Chris Truskowski / Turner, whatever it is right now, but and Smitty, they all bide their time. But I think the best thing about it, everybody knew the role. Chris Truskowski knew his role, Lee knew his role, Smitty knew his role, Casey Lee. So I think that's what blended us to make that run into the national championship. Everybody knew what they had to do for us to win.
So we go into your senior year. You've missed spring break. We're getting ready to play some games, and we have a game Tuesday, I believe it was, after you got back. We're going up to Kent State. Danny Hall, who's the head coach at Georgia Tech, it's in his first year coming down from Michigan as a head baseball coach. You haven't practiced. You haven't done anything. And you probably thought your coach was kind of dumb because he said, hey, get your uniform. You're going to go play today.
Yeah.
Tell us about that game.
That was a great game. I can't – did we win that game? Do you remember?
Yeah, we did, 8-3.
Yeah, we did. That's right. We went up there and won at Kent State. So that was a great feeling. Great to be back with the guys. And that was the senior lady team too, with me and Ed Powell and a couple other players. John Nye, who was on probably the ace of that team, and Scott Hall. So we had a real good bunch of kids, guys that played, and I just went up there and tried to do my job, and we went up there with a win. Yeah,
I think you're being a little modest here because you always had the ability to kind of loosen the tension a little bit, and so we didn't, like I say, we didn't have you early on, and you went 5 for 5 that day.
Oh, okay.
Probably don't remember it.
I don't.
But we faced 3 pitchers. Kent threw 3 guys, 3 innings each. I remember, I think Hermanson was one. I had a couple other guys. All 3 guys were drafted high in Major League Baseball, and you went 5 for 5 that day. I remember in pregame batting practice, we came out in BP, and I don't think hit a ball close to the fence. The wind was blowing in. And they came out, and their whole pitching staff went out behind the outfield fence. And we're hitting about every ball that was thrown to them out of the park. And I remember you grabbing one of the balls in our little pregame break, holding it up, telling the guys that they're using these rubber juice balls. I don't know if they were or not, but you told them they were. And that you wasn't going to let them intimidate you. That's kind of the athlete you were. And we ended up winning 8-3. And, it was a great win for us and kind of propelled us into, a great season. So you end up getting drafted again. You get drafted by the Chicago White Sox this time.
Mm-hmm.
And Lou Laszlo was the area scout, and Lou came to quite a few games, and you go off into pro ball. So you immediately go down, I think it was Gulf Coast League.
Yes, Sarasota.
Yep. And tell us about your first couple weeks down there when you're starting to play games. What was going on?
It was hot, and we were out there, 8-9 hours a day for spring training. But and we played, Gulf Coast League. We played at 1:00, so it was really hot. No, not very many people at the game. So we were fortunate enough. We had a great season. We finished a half a game back behind the Yankees, and we probably would have won it, but Deion Sanders came down and played rehab games, and they went on a little roll to take the lead from us. But I was fortunate enough to lead the rookie league in hitting at 341, beat a guy out by decimal points. But it was a great year, great experience. And then I got invited to instructional league after that and stayed down there for the fall after rookie ball.
So basketball was always your sport, right? Kind of growing up, that was the sport you wanted to play, and that's your thing. Baseball kind of grew into your sport. Your grandmother, who I have to admit now that I made a deal with when you came to visit, I told her she ran a summer league team, and it was an older team, and you played on it for a while with her. But I told her that my assistant coach, who was a legend here in Central Ohio, Coach Meyer, would coach her summer team if she could convince you to come to Ohio West and play basketball and baseball. And she said she'd do what she'd see what she could do. Tell us about your baseball experience growing up. I mean, how much did you play? I mean, how serious were you? And when did you realize you had the ability to go play at a pro level?
Well, I really grew up with the game because with my grandmother, obviously, being the general manager or whatever you want to call it, the Columbus Knights, her son, my uncle Brian, pitched at Capital. And that's when the Capital and Marietta had this real bad rivalry. I mean, it was really good. So we went down every year down to Marietta, down to Dick Cheney Stadium, which is a great place to watch games. So I'd follow Capital baseball and just follow him around. So I kind of fell in love with the game then. And then back to my grandmother, back to your visit, she brought me to Ohio Wesleyan. And I remember on her car, she had a big old Capital sticker on the back for, to support her son, my Uncle Brian. And then she sat in the car, and then Coach Mahaffey and I think you said, "Where's your grandmother?" And I was like, "Well, she's sitting out in the car." So she said, "Go get him." So she came up, and then I went on my visit and hung out with some of the players, and we got in the car driving back down 23. And she goes, "So Scott, what do you think?" And I said, "Great people, great family." She goes, "Well, if you don't go here, I'm going to go there. So you guys treated her first class and everything." And she really liked Ohio Wesleyan, liked you, and like Coach Mahaffey. And the next thing you know, I'm at Ohio Wesleyan the next year.
Yeah, she's awesome lady.
Mm-hmm.
So you get into pro baseball. You had great success your first year. Lou calls me a few times, kind of brings me up to date with what's going on. Tells me every time he goes to spring training, you're hanging out with Tim Raines and Thomas and all those guys. So you fit in obviously really well with many of the major league guys. That they didn't seem to intimidate you. Mm-hmm. But now let's kind of speed ahead. I think you played 8 years, 9 years. How many years did you play, Scott?
7.
7 years.
Mm-hmm.
Never hit below 300, right?
1 year I did. I had a bad year, I think, in 92, but that was, a tough year. But yeah, I was around a 290, 295 career hitter.
Yeah, it's a pretty good career. Again, Division III player going into professional baseball. Now you're going to Birmingham, right? And
yes.
Tell us about when you first got assigned to Birmingham, what you thought about it, and what challenges were playing it, because at that time and still today, AA baseball is really where most of the big prospects are. So tell us about that.
Yeah, the first year was it was okay. I hit around 280, 285. And then the White Sox were worried about my power numbers, so I really had to focus on getting stronger and faster. And then came back to AA and had a real good year. I think I finished 3rd in the league in hitting, and then eventually got invited to big league camp after that year. And then eventually went up and down between AA and AAA, and then had a real good year in AAA with Nashville towards the end of the year. And then when I was there with the White Sox, they weren't very good, but they started to stack it up and start getting better. So they brought in some outfitters, like you said, Johnson, Tim Raines, and some big names. So they picked them up on the free agent. So it kind of pushed everybody back down. So I went back to AA, and that's the year that everybody probably knows in '94 was the Jordan year. So I didn't complain about going back down to Birmingham because I knew Michael was going to be there. So it was a good time and a great thing for your career to actually feel like you're in the big leagues media-wise when Michael was on your team.
So tell us again, you're going down, you find out Michael Jordan, the Michael Jordan, is coming to play baseball with Birmingham Barons. What was your thought process at that time?
To be honest with you, I was pretty excited because the excitement here in Birmingham, Hoover, where I live, was astronomical. I did an interview yesterday with ESPN on the radio, and obviously they found out that he bought the bus and bought a new bus for us. But usually around the beginning of the season, there'd be 3 or 4 reporters there at our games. Well, when he came, the first game, there was 130 reporters from all over the world. So it was pretty cool to see that. And it made you feel like you were in the big leagues as far as handling everything, the media, the pressure, and everything that goes along with being with a superstar like Michael. But it was a great summer. Still talk to him often. Not often, but probably about once a year. So still great friends. And then obviously with the Last Dance going on with no sports, he's getting a lot of publicity right now.
So you had a pretty good manager in Birmingham, right?
Yeah, Tito Francona.
And he's turned out to have a pretty good career. And obviously those of us that are Indians fans enjoy watching him. Did he talk to you guys at all before Michael came, or did the team address at all that, hey, we've got this guy coming in and this is how we need to handle this? Or do you remember how that interaction was?
Yeah, we had a team meeting before the season even started in the clubhouse. And Tito grew up in a big league clubhouse. His dad, I think it's Tito too, played in the big league. So he hung out in the big league clubhouse, and then he played in the big league. So he knew what was going to be happening. I don't think he understood what the magnitude was going to be, but he understood what was going to happen. So he sat down and told us this is, there's going to be 3 rules. You be on time, play hard, and listen to me. And, media, let Michael handle all that. But if they ask you questions, just defer everything to Michael. So it was great having him. And we knew he wasn't going to be there long. After you played with Tito, you knew he was a big league manager. I played for a lot of managers, Art Kushner, who was in the big leagues also. But you just had that knack that Tito was going to be a big league manager. I didn't know he was going to break the curse with the Red Sox, but I think he won 2 there. So, But yeah, he was a player's manager, great manager, handled all the situations that came up with Michael.
So let's talk about Michael now. He comes in, buys a new bus, right? Now, is that a bus that everybody on the team was on, or just a few guys rode on? Did you have a couple buses? How'd you guys travel?
We just had one bus. And to give him credit, I mentioned this yesterday, he rode every bus trip. He didn't fly anywhere. Like, for instance, if we played a Friday night game in Birmingham and we had a 9-hour bus trip to Orlando, he was right on the bus with us. He didn't fly to any games. He was on the bus rides with us all summer, hung out with us, took us out to dinner because he knew it was a hassle. The only thing is, there was no cell phones, no social media, so we really had to hang out with him and, kind of cling on to him. But we go out to eat, we have to call restaurants, and they would have to close out a section for us just to eat. And then we'd go eat, and then we'd leave. And then by the time we left, the whole restaurant was packed because they found out that Michael was eating there with us. So, but he really took care of his minor leaguers. I think the difference between him now and when he was in the minor leagues, he loved hanging out in the clubhouse with us, where in the NBA, they've got so many obligations and so many things going on. After the game, they are gone. They do their interviews and they're gone. In baseball, you kind of hang out, eat, and just kind of socialize. And he didn't have that in the NBA. So I think he appreciated us, our work ethic, and then basically, every day. We played 142 games in 150 days, where the NBA, you only played 82, but it was stretched out over 6-7 months. So I think he really appreciated our hard work and everything we did, and he fit right in, and he understood that we had the same goal as he did, is trying to get to the big leagues.
So what was he like as a teammate?
Oh, he was a great teammate. I can one instance was pretty funny. We were getting a little feisty with another team, Knoxville Smokies, and he was right on the top step, yelling at their pitcher and doing everything that a regular player would do. So he was a great teammate, and he really stuck up for us and really took care of us.
So one of the things you see a lot is the Michael Jordan trash talk. A lot of guys laugh about in the NBA that he could talk it with the best of them. How was he as a baseball trash talker?
He was kind of quiet because, to be honest with you, he was still trying to learn everything because he hadn't played for 16 years, and they put him, in probably the best prospect league in AA in the Southern League. So I think he was trying to find his way around. But once he started hitting and hitting home runs, he definitely talked trash to not the opposing team, but us in the clubhouse to try to get us fired up for the game. And we were probably about a 600 percentage team, and he wasn't used to that. He's used to winning 90 and 95% of the time. So he would take some losses hard because he wasn't used to losing. I think we were like 72 and 50 something, and he was like, guys, we lost 50 something games. We're like, it's okay, Michael. We play 142, but he probably didn't lose 50 games his last 5 years with the Bulls. So that was a transition that he had to make a little bit.
Yeah. So one of the things that you see in The Last Dance and you see in other articles and stories about Michael was he could be pretty hard on his teammates in the NBA. He was a competitor.
Yeah.
And I think most people respected that. Did you see that side of him in Birmingham?
Yeah, more off the field because of the success that obviously hitting 202, but he did have 30 stolen bases and 51 RBIs. So he did have some bright points during the season. But yeah, in the clubhouse, ping pong, cards, he wanted to win everything. He didn't care what it took, but what he did. But he was going to win. So, and we played some pickup basketball games after the Sunday afternoon games. And we go out and play, and he'd be fine. And then when it came crunch time, he wasn't going to lose. So he was very, very competitive in everything he did.
So that brings me to the point that ESPN had a question one night. One of their little trivia questions was, what baseball team had two Division I or two National Players of the Year basketball players on it? And of course, it was Birmingham Barons, you and Michael. So how'd you handle that conversation with Michael?
Oh, we talked a lot of trash to each other on basketball, and then we finally got to play. I believe it was at Memphis, and I wasn't on his team. I didn't want to be on his team because I wanted to see exactly what I had. So we started playing 5-on-5. He played with the coaches, and we had some other players play on my team. But he knew I could play, but he didn't believe it. So we started playing, and I hit 3 or 4 3-pointers, and we were playing the 16, so it was like 15-7. And then he got mad and basically looked at me and said, "Scott, you're not going to touch the ball again." And I was like, "Yeah, right, Mike. I just scored 12 points on you." And 10 minutes later, 17-15, they won. And of course, I didn't touch the ball, but it was a great experience to play against him and score some buckets on him. But again, when it came to crunch time, he wasn't going to lose a pickup basketball game.
Where do you think his love for baseball came from?
His father wanted to play in the big leagues. And then the unfortunate accident, obviously he was killed on the side of the road, I think in North Carolina. So I think that kind of gave him extra incentive to come out and try to play baseball. And then I guess we'll see this week on The Last Dance why he left the Bulls. I guess him and Jerry Krause weren't getting along. So he decided to try baseball and fulfill his father's dream.
You ever talk about that at all with anyone?
He never did. We didn't know about it until the media caught on of why he was coming to Birmingham or to play baseball. That his father always said that he wanted to be a Major League Baseball player, and that was his first love. Especially after I think his sophomore year in high school, he got cut by the basketball team, so he was forced to play baseball. So I think that was his dad's first love, and he just wanted to try to fulfill that dream for him.
So after you guys finished playing, you had a great time together, and he had his, and you've still kept in touch and you've been friends. I know there's a couple opportunities where he's kind of reached out and been supportive in ways. You want to talk about those a little bit?
Yeah, I mentioned it yesterday on ESPN. Back in 2003, I was diagnosed with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, and he found out about it. And he called me and said, "Hey, he was playing for the Washington Wizards. I think it was his last year. He said, I'm coming. We play in Atlanta. Why don't you drive over? It's about a 2-hour drive, and I'll take care of you." And I said, "Okay." So I drove over with a couple buddies that I work with, and we sat right behind the bench. And after the game, his bodyguard George came and got us all. And we went in the locker room and talked for a little bit. And he pulled me to the side and says, "Hey, how you doing?" I think I was about between my second or third treatment of chemo, and he's just wanted to check in on me. He wanted me to come over there to see him, check, make sure everything was good with my family. My wife was 6 months pregnant at the time, so he was checking on them and really just checking on me. And this was 9 years after we played together, so I just thought it was a cool bond that he invited me over to Atlanta just to watch him play, and he wanted to check in on me.
What would you say about Michael Jordan that no one really knows, or what would you want people to know about the time that you guys spent together there in Birmingham, either with you or your teammates?
I think the stuff he does behind the scenes that nobody sees, and you can see it on the Last Dance. Obviously, he's hard on his players, but I'm sure he took care of them on the other side, just like he took care of the baseball players. He always took care of us, was always out there, taking us places that we probably would never go, PGA golf courses and big time restaurants that we couldn't afford. We were making like $1,300 a month in the minor leagues, so we really couldn't afford some of the places that we could go eat. So I think the things that he does behind the scenes really counted towards us being great friends. And I seen that the examples that he set when his family came in town. He'd rent out a whole movie theater so he could take his kids to go watch a movie because he couldn't watch it if it was packed. So he'd rent out a whole movie theater just to take his family again to see movies, and rent out restaurants so he could just go eat with his family. But he has a very kind heart for the people that are good to him.
I remember you told me one time that it was the closest thing to being in a rock band.
It was. There were some instances, in opposing cities that we couldn't get out of the driveway because they had our bus surrounded because people just wanted to see and touch Michael. So it was pretty cool. Not at the time because we were a little scared. We didn't know what was going to happen. But you look back on it now, it was pretty cool how things shaked out. But it was once in a lifetime experience to play with him and just to see the things that people do just to see him and just to touch him. I mean, they would drive 8-9 hours just to see him, and hold up a sign. I drove 9 hours just to see you play, Michael, and things like that. I could see family and friends, but these are people that he had no idea who were, and they were driving 8-9 hours just to see him.
So you get out of pro baseball. You've got a family. Tell us a little bit about your family.
I've got 2 girls. One's a junior at the University of Texas. She plays softball. Had a great high school career, and unfortunately, with the virus, they were ranked number 1 in the country at the time, and they had to cut short the season. So she's home. She's been home for about a month. I don't see her much. A college student comes in and comes out, but she was academically all Big 12, so I'm very proud of that. And I have a junior. It's in high school. It runs track at Hoover High School. And my wife is a assistant principal at Hoover High School.
So your daughter that's at Texas, I believe she started in high school or played high school softball as a 7th grader down there?
Yeah, as a 7th grader. They're allowed to do that down here. The coach has to get permission from the school board. So their coach really felt that she could play. So she went to the school board and got it approved that she could play as a 7th grader. So that's where I think she really grew up and became humble, because it was tough on a 7th grader playing varsity girls that were, 18 years old, and she was 13 or 14. So, and then I think that built her up to have a great high school career. And, she was a USA Today All-American and NFCA All-American. So she had a great career, and I think it helped her out being able to play since 7th grade.
Well, I know you were involved, I think, in some of the youth uh, experiences and some great opportunities that were there in Alabama, and that. How's it changed your perspective on women's athletics, having two daughters now that compete versus when you were in college or you were in high school and looking at it, Scott? How have you grown that way?
Yeah, it's a different perspective, especially. And I had a brother that played basketball, so it was just me and him, and the family that were boys. So and then raising girls, but you just got to have more patience with girls and really go to bat for them because when you see it in the softball world is really growing now. But when we started like 8U and 10U, it was nothing like the boys. The boys got everything. The girls, got shafted a little bit. But now with the Title IX and everything, it's a great opportunity for women. There's a lot of scholarships out there for women if you really want to go after it. Women's golf and some other women's track, women's softball, and just really grown the sport in the past few years. So I think that this year was supposed to be the most games televised on ESPN for women's softball. So it's really grown sport, and it was a great time traveling around the country. I coached our travel ball team, and we went to California, Oklahoma City, all over the country just to play against the best competition. So there's great opportunities out there for women's sports right now.
Yeah, I know watching my own daughter, Sarah, when she was growing up, playing three sports, and she was volleyball, and then she changed to field hockey, but played basketball, and then she played softball, and some great experiences. And it really changes your perspective on things when you start to see how hard they work. And one of the things that I coached women's basketball for a while, you may remember,
Yeah.
I've been after you left there at Ohio Wesleyan, but the women would run through a wall, whereas some of you guys, I'd have to explain why the wall was there and how you should approach it, and then you'd want to question everything we asked about. But
We want to run around it rather than go through it.
That's right. That's right. So looking back now on your career, coming out of Whitehall High School,
Mm-hmm.
Ohio, going to a small college, playing some pro baseball, having had an opportunity, you could have went and played some pro basketball, being a national champion, being a national player of the year, being an All-American in two sports. What are the lessons that you've learned or that you have that you would share with young men, young women right now at the high school and college level that you wish you had known back then?
My first lesson would be to all the players out there, just because you don't get Division I or Division II offers, that doesn't mean anything. Go somewhere where you're going to be happy. The best decision I made in my life, and the best 4 years of my life, was at Ohio Wesleyan. I got to play right away. I got to play two sports. And like you said, we won a national championship, went to regionals in baseball, got drafted. If you're good enough, they're going to find you. So you just don't have to go big time. You just got to go somewhere where you're going to be happy. And Division III was happy for me. And everybody's like, you're going to Ohio Wesleyan? I said, yes. And then, 4 years later, they're like, you made a great decision. Looking back, I got to meet President Reagan. I got to win a national championship. I got drafted in baseball. Small town feel in Delaware, Ohio. Small classes, 12 to 16 people in this class. Professors actually knew who you were when you came to class, when you left, when you did your work. Where in big schools, you don't have that feel. So I highly recommend anybody to go to Division III, and particularly Ohio Wesleyan, where I went. Still have a lot of friends there at school. Obviously, Mike DeWitt's the best basketball coach there that played with me at Ohio Wesleyan. So go somewhere where you're going to be happy and experience, and also where you're going to play. I mean, you see all these transfer portal now where I'm not playing, so I'm going to transfer. They didn't have that back then. You either worked harder and beat somebody out, or you just sat the bench. So go somewhere where you're going to be happy and play.
I was going to say, your national championship team is a great point of that, because you had guys who played junior varsity competition for 2 years
Mm-hmm.
before they got that chance to go on a varsity level, and then became the best in the country. So, Scott, tell us a little bit about Coach Mahaffey. I mean, he was your head basketball coach. Obviously, a great guy.
Yes.
He's one of the guys that was a mentor to me when I first got there. I was very fortunate. I had some great people, great coaches at Ohio Wesleyan. But tell us a little bit about your relationship and what you learned through him.
It was great. I mean, he was a perfectionist. He wanted everything to be perfect. Take every possession like it's your last possession, was be his saying. I've learned a great deal, and it was a perfect system for me. Kind of being in between Division I, Division III player, being at 6'2", 6'3". But he loved to press and run, which I love that style. And as you mentioned earlier, I was pretty fast and quick, so it fit right into my system as far as where I wanted to go to school and the way he explained it. And he's still a great friend. I talked to him about 2 weeks ago. He's doing a little better. He's down in Myrtle Beach or Hilton Head, one of them, just hanging out, playing golf every other day, and hanging out with his wife. But yeah, he was a mentor, just like you were, as far as the baseball, the things you learn in college, the early workouts, the going to class, practice, studying. That's life lessons that you learn in your 4 years at college. And my daughter's going through that right now, where she's taking finals, but it's online. But just to go through the process and be a college student, it really prepares you to meet the real world out there. And I owe a lot to you and to Coach Mahaffey for making that happen.
Well, looking forward here, what's the future hold for the Tedder family?
That's a great question. Hopefully get my daughter through school. With this virus thing, she gets an extra year, so she's going to stay as of right now at the University of Texas and get her master's. Her goal is to be the commissioner of the SEC. And I said, hey, go for it. That's your goal. And she's sports management, has like a 3.8 in sports management. So she's doing very, very well. And she set a goal at the beginning of her end of her high school career that she wanted to be an SEC commissioner. So that's great. My youngest daughter's trying to decide Alabama, Auburn, Clemson, some other schools, not to play athletically, but she's got all the smarts. She's very, very smart academically. So hopefully she'll get some academic money as far as that. But we're trying to decide where she wants to go to school. And, just basically right now, just go day by day with this pandemic going on. So things are good right now. Chilling on my back porch in Hoover, Alabama. Life's good. Got great friends from Ohio Wesleyan all the way back to Whitehall, and life's good right now.
So I guess last question, and we'll kind of wrap this up here. Any regrets? Looking back, I mean, is there anything you would have done different? Anything you wish might have turned out different over your career, over your time?
As far as school-wise, no. Ohio Wesleyan was the best decision I ever made. Only regret would probably be I probably put more into baseball than I really did. And I'm being honest with you, not just because you're the coach. You were the coach, but I was so focused on basketball that, baseball was just another sport that I wanted to play. But then I realized I could be pretty good at baseball. I just wish I would have, practiced harder, made the games easier, things like that. But looking back, that was my career after college, was playing professional baseball. So I wish I'd done a lot more on the baseball career-wise in college than I really did. But as far as regrets, I've got no regrets. Like I said earlier, great education, great people, great accomplishments, things that a lot of Division III people don't get to do, or Division II or Division I. And I'm not sure if any Division III teams have ever went and met the president. So we got to do a lot of things and met a lot of great people, and still go back to Ohio Wesleyan, try to get back there twice a year just to see everybody. And it was a great experience.
I know that experience in the White House was set up by Congressman John Kasich at the time, later became governor of Ohio.
Yes.
You guys got to go, and five starters were there with Coach Mahaffey, and you got to meet President Reagan. It was kind of cool. It's just, again, it's one of those things where you were the first team to get in the NCAA tournament in basketball, first team to win a national championship at Ohio Wesleyan, and obviously you were the first national player of the year there in basketball. So, Scott, it's been great, and really enjoyed catching up with you. And we'll look forward to our texting and chatting. Move forward, okay?
All right. I appreciate it, Coach. Take care and stay safe.